Welcome to the Mitcham History Notes YouTube channel. 80 years ago, on Tuesday the 8th of May 1945, victory in Europe was declared. The local weekly newspaper, the Mitcham News Mercury, declared on Friday the 11th of May that victory is ours. Bonfires blaze the light of peace, and Mitcham blossoms into a cascade of red, white and blue. In this video, I'll be showing photographs of the numerous street parties that were held in the following days across Mitcham. The newspaper article I'll be reading from comes from the 18th of May issue of the paper. Spontaneous celebrations all over the borough. Scores of street tea parties were held in Mitcham at the weekend in celebration of victory when, in sunny, beflagged streets, hundreds of children sat down at gaily laid tables to a meal of delicacies provided by generous housewives. The tea party idea broke spontaneously all over the borough as soon as victory was declared. The menfolk organised money collections and their wives gave away precious rations, conjured cakes and jellies from meagrely stocked pantry shelves and spent their holiday cooking for and organising the parties. The mayor and mayoress of Mitcham, Alderman and Mrs A.H. Bailey, were guests of honour in many streets on Saturday afternoon. Arriving at Edmund Road, whose celebrations were typical of those throughout the borough, they accepted an invitation to tea and sat down on benches to take tea with Mrs. Russell, the street's oldest inhabitant, and 50 children. With them was the vicar of Mitcham, the Reverend G.S. Lubbock. Organisers of the Edmund Road party were Mr and Mrs York, and the chief cook was Mrs S. Gorman, who made 50 jellies in red, white and blue cups, as well as several hundred cakes. Tea was followed by games and merrymaking, which ended with a street bonfire around which the children danced. Then came more refreshments and sausage rolls, served from Mrs. Gorman's front garden by her daughter, Mrs. Warren, whose husband is in Italy. There was more merrymaking in Pear Close on Saturday, where 60 children were given tea in the street. Bring your own tables and chairs, we will provide the rest, was the order of the day from Mrs. Pearce, organiser, and Mrs. Price, chief cook. Practically every house in Pear Close has a son or husband serving in the forces, and flags fluttered gaily from the houses to which loved ones will soon return. In Edgehill Road, 80 children under 14 were invited to take tea in the road on VE Day. It was a grand do. In 24 hours, £18 had been collected, and housewives were busy at their ovens. Each child was given a shilling, and the day ended with fireworks, a bonfire and dancing, with a piano in the street. At Raleigh Gardens, there was tea and dancing in the street for 40 people. At Bramcote Avenue, the mayor and mayoress were among the guests, and again at Steers Mead. There was a good spread of jellies and blancmanges at Bordergate, Manship Road, and Caithness Road, and tables at Baker Lane were gay with flags. Cambridge Road, Oxford Close and Carshalton Road were not to be outdone, and entertained scores of children to tea and games. And New Barnes Road, Rodney Road, Sherwood Park Road and Greenwood Road also had gay tea party scenes. It was a weekend that will long be remembered by hundreds of Mitcham children and their parents, for never before has there been such a demonstration of spontaneous goodwill and happiness in the borough. More than 35 children were entertained in Carshalton Road, Mitcham Junction. Despite the short notice, over £6 was collected, and due to the generosity of the neighbours, such treats as jellies and trifles delighted the happy youngsters. Many willing helpers waited on the young guests, making VE Day a very happy memory to these children after all they have endured. The evening's proceedings were brought to a successful climax by the burning of a replica of Hitler on a substantial bonfire, the handiwork of the children themselves. Mrs. Plackett and Mrs Kirby, Woodland Way, made a house-to-house collection of food on VE Day, +2, with the result that 58 children sat down to a tea of jellies, cakes, tarts and fruit.